What's up, everybody? We'll get started here in just a moment. Apologies for being late. It was a pretty busy day for me today, so I was in the office late. But if you can hear us, and if we're streaming in 1080p, just go ahead and give a thumbs up in the chat, and we will get started shortly. And you won't be able to rewind tonight because I just forgot to do it. That's all right. But anyway, let us know if we're all good, and we'll kick this off here momentarily. Welcome to New York City, the Plaza Hotel, Central Park South, all that good stuff. So. Alrighty, let me clip this microphone, but we'll have to make do with what we got. And you know what? I think we'll just get started since we're starting late. It's already past 9:30. Again, apologies for being tardy, but you know, sometimes duty calls, sometimes work is busy, sometimes it's not. Today was busy. We're starting directly outside of the GM building. You can see the flagship Apple store here on 5th Avenue, looking down towards Trump Tower. Look at that. I think the big guy is in New York City today. For a short time, I mean, the crowds were insane outside the office today. Everybody was trying to get a glimpse of what I believe to be was President Trump. I think he's in town for his court case. So, I mean, you can see all the barricades up there all the way to Madison Avenue, which is where my office is, right behind these conglomerate of buildings. So it was definitely an eventful day today in New York City. But in terms of the financial markets, talk about a really, really big rally day across the board. And that VIX, you know, we have to talk about the VIX, the CBOE volatility index, really cratering. And, you know, if you go back throughout history, usually, right, when you have these big bids in the VIX like we had last week, that's usually a good time to short volatility, right, or go short vol in general. And last week was really brutal. I mean, it's very uncommon in the market to go down day after day after day and pretty much catch no bid. I mean, the market last week was quite literally no bid. We never had not one rally day. I posted something on X or Twitter on Friday morning, and I said, look, if we don't get a rally Friday, I'm going to be absolutely shocked. Well, turns out we didn't get a rally. Friday was a bloodbath. But Monday and Tuesday today, we had some follow-through. And we had some pretty ferocious rallies on the street. And we needed that. I mean, if we didn't rally yesterday and today, I mean, I would have started to get a little bit nervous. That doesn't mean we're out of the woods, but I think that's very encouraging, which gives us some data as we're standing here at Grand Army Plaza, that this is a normal correction in a longer cyclical bull, right? We'll talk about some of the sectors that did exceptionally well. Obviously, we are now in the thick of earnings season. Last week and the week before, we talked about the major investment banks, major financials reporting earnings. And by and large, right, not to sound like a broken record, but earnings were really good on Wall Street, particularly for the major investment banks and the pure play banks, particularly Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs investment banking revenue for Q1, the highest since 2021, when we had that big deal-making boom on Wall Street. Goldman Sachs almost at a new all-time record high. JP Morgan Chase recovering, Wells Fargo is trading really, really well. And the broader financial sector as a whole, if you look at the ticker symbol XLF, which is the ETF for the financial sector, doing really well, catching a nice bid yesterday and today, which is very encouraging. And I'll tell you why. Well, at least in my opinion. Because if we want to have confidence that this bull market is sustained, you're really going to need participation from the financials. You go back throughout American history, almost every single major crisis that sparked a major bear market or a crash or a pandemic crisis, most of the times it starts in the financial sector. So we could thank the big investment banks for always getting us into trouble. Won't get too political there, but when you see them doing well, when you see these banks well capitalized, earnings are good, you're seeing this rebound in M&A, in IPO activity, that is really a telltale sign for the broader economy. And I think that's important to focus in on that. Energy did okay. It's going to be interesting to see how things trade tomorrow. But Thursday, I think, is really going to be the day that either confirms this new uptrend when Microsoft reports, right? Microsoft is the largest stock in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, multi-trillion-dollar company, and I think we need a big report out of Microsoft. All right, so without further ado, let me say hello to everybody in the chat. It's a beautiful night in New York City, but you guys got to look at this full moon here. This is a crazy full moon in between the GM building, overlooking the east side of Manhattan, and things are pretty clear. It's a pretty cool night. Old Wise Owl says, Tom, medicals are printing right now, or long calls. Robinson, good to see you. Goldie Caulfield says, good evening. Brad's Brain, what's going on? Alan, Teresa Diaz, Mohammed. Hey, Trade Brigade is here. What's going on? Sally, Robert, Kimberly, NBA Elias. Old Wise Owl says, Boeing to 205. Now, you know what's interesting? Speaking of those, legacy American companies, guys, GE, General Electric's doing really well after the spinoff. I think they reported earnings earlier, and General Electric, now they are kind of broken off into three distinct segments, I believe, right? You have the traditional ticker symbol GE, which is the aerospace company, doing really, really well. The stock was up again today after earnings, and just goes to show that good leadership is what you need to run a company. I think Larry Culp has done a fantastic job, who's the new CEO. Well, I really shouldn't say the new CEO of GE. He's been the CEO of GE for a long time. However, I was reading an interesting article, and I want to know your thoughts on this. Full transparency, one of my buddies wrote the article, but the article states that Larry Culp should step down as the CEO of General Electric and should be hired as the CEO of Boeing to turn that fire mess around, right? I mean, Boeing is, almost like I don't want to get so over the top, but what the hell is going on over there? Is it me, or does it seem like every single day in the media there's a problem with the Boeing aircraft? It's either doors blowing off here, or wheels falling off over there. The whole company is just absolutely falling apart. Does Boeing need a CEO like Larry Culp? I don't know. Old Wise Owl says GE is a W. Trade Brigades is a rocket ship in GE, quite literally. Yeah, now Trade Brigade, it's crazy because when you look at this ticker, right? So if you go on TradingView or wherever you look at your charts, go on a monthly time frame. And I tried to post this to X today, but I don't know, I was having some issues. Maybe it was just my Wi-Fi, but you can really see the history of that company. And what I think I'm going to do is print out a big poster of GE stock going back to its inception on a monthly time frame, and just kind of mark up the notable turning points in that company. And you could really see which CEOs knocked it out of the park and which CEOs ran that company into the ground. It's just a crazy, crazy stock, the way it trades, but was up big. Root, what's going on? Thanks so much for joining us. Stan says Boeing is suffering from government employee disease. It's definitely very catchy. DC322 says it's quality control issues at Boeing. Yeah, I'm not an expert in Boeing, but whatever's going on over there doesn't look good. Adam says, greetings from LA. Did you hear about the 24-hour trading proposed? What are your thoughts on it? I did hear about that. I actually don't know how I feel about that, by the way. But this is the 5th Avenue subway station. You can get the N, R, and the W trains. And this is quite literally overlooking Central Park. Looks beautiful, right? You can see the reservoir here. But I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I believe there's going to be a vote on whether there should be 24-hour stock trading. Now, obviously, you could trade futures, right? But they're talking about 24/7 individual stock trading. I don't know. I honestly don't know how I feel about that. I mean, how is that going to work? And then what? It would work the same for holidays, like major holidays, the market would be closed. I just don't see a need to, right? I don't think people need to be sitting in front of their computer, watching every single tick of the market. But then again, I don't really want to be on the wrong side of history. I do see a world where everything is readily available 24/7, 365. But I mean, if trading actually does commence round the clock, the market never closes, I just don't know if that'll be good for people's health, honestly. I mean, think about the people who work in the business, right? If you work at a sales and trading desk or something like that. I mean, what do you get, no break? I just don't know. I don't know. I really don't know what my thoughts are. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit more. John says, I'm definitely against it. No chance for the market to adjust itself. Well, you could also argue that the vast majority of the moves in the market happen when the market's not even open, which is actually true, by the way. There was a really good study I was reading in my college days, kind of disproving how day trading is not profitable, because you need volatility to make money in the market. And if the vast majority of the action of the movements is taking place after hours and you're just trading stocks intraday, there's not enough volatility for you to make money, right? So, if you're investing in, America's great companies and you're just buying and selling every day and churning over your account, you're never going to be able to participate in the gains. Almost never, right? That's why oftentimes you'll hear, a big headline on CNBC or something like that says, Nvidia, beats earnings expectations and raises forward guidance. The stock is up 15% after hours, right? Or vice versa. Maybe the stock is down or something like that. But by and large, if you're not in the market and sitting through earnings for the most part, it's very, very difficult to make any money. So, I don't know. What would that do to volatility on the street if the market's just open 24 hours a day? It's interesting, right? Alex411 says those horses are definitely working 24 hours. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about these either. I think they rotate them out. On a previous live stream, I've showed you guys where they keep these horses. And they keep them at DeWitt Clinton Park, or I should say right across the street from DeWitt Clinton. So, I don't know. It's going to be summer pretty soon, so you guys will be able to see the protesters. Every summer there's these protesters against these horses for whatever reason. Stan says it takes 48 hours to make a trade, does it not? Are you talking about settlement? Gene S is not good for the economy, 24-hour trading. Storm says, have you been to the Panhandle, Florida? I have. Not a big fan. I mean, I love the state of Florida, just not a big fan of the Panhandle. TK Porsche says, the CEO search at Boeing should be left to the board. GE's problems were completely different than Boeing's, so GE CEO may not be the right choice. Boeing must fix this. Yeah. And it's kind of sad to see, right? Because Boeing, once was a great American company, we're kind of seeing the degradation and the deterioration of it right before our eyes, quite literally. So look, we'll see. Brad says you can trade 24 hours now, just different markets. Yeah, like there's futures and things like that, right? And currencies, but I don't know. Like, what kind of quality of life is that going to be if markets are open 24/7 and you're just staring at your computer screen all the time? I don't think that's a really good life, at least for me, but who knows? Maybe it makes markets more efficient. And how is that going to impact earnings? Like, I have a lot of questions. So when a company reports earnings, right, and the market's just open 24 hours, do you think that's going to dampen the volatility? Because one of the main reasons, and then we're going to cross the street here, one of the main reasons why you have those big moves after hours, what is this guy doing? Is because there's no liquidity, right? The after hours markets are very thin, they call it. So, I don't know. Let's see what Trade Brigade has to say. Trade Brigade says the futures already have a huge shift in active participation. I think it would remain the same even if equities were 24/7, but a huge drop-off in volume. Interesting. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps you're right. Now, you know what I thought was funny? When we had that solar eclipse, I think that was the lowest trading volume day of the year, the day of the eclipse. I guess it makes sense, right? Everybody's out watching the eclipse, not watching the markets. However, I never buy stocks. Hold on, let me give you guys a good shot of 157 in Central Park Tower. It seems like, oops, hold on. I think we're in a buffer zone. We are outside of a Trump building, so oftentimes there's buffering there. I think we should be good now. Let's see. We're back? Yeah. Usually we don't buffer on that corner. Now, right on that corner is 106 Central Park South. That's Eric Trump's building, so maybe there's some sort of jammer over there. I forgot what we were saying, but let's wait for this light and then we'll cross to the downside. This is 57th Street, Billionaires Row. Well, Trump is in town, but he's on 5th Avenue. But 106 Central Park South, I think, is one of the primary residences of Eric Trump. At least when I lived there, I knew he had a place there. Everything in Miami says the Wall Street Journal reported that the FTC declared non-compete agreements not legal. Well, they're really just not enforceable. I mean, if you talk to really any attorney, for my previous 2 jobs, I had to sign non-competes, but I mean, it's just impossible to enforce them. The only time someone really enforces those non-compete agreements is if you're a big shot at a company, right? You're very, very high level, and you're bringing secrets or proprietary information from one company to another. But if you're just a run-of-the-mill regular employee, and let's say if you work at, T-Mobile or something, right? And they make you sign a non-compete. If you leave, you can't go work at, Verizon. Just as an example, nobody's going to enforce that. It's just not even worth anybody's time to do that with the legal fees and all the nonsense. So from my experience, non-competes, is particularly in a state like New York, it's not even worth the paper it's written on, honestly. But again, not an attorney, not giving out any advice. No legal advice here. But that's just my take. Wow, everything in Miami says my previous broker threatened to sue me. That's interesting. I mean, you got to ask yourself, is it really worth to go through all of that time and money dealing with lawyers to get what? To get how much? Right? Well, how much money could they get? I think just people say things. NAV 407 says Trump is in New York City every day. He is required to be in court every day right now. How long do you think this court trial is going to last? I haven't really been following it. I try not to pay attention to the news. But how long do you think this thing is going to last? It'll be interesting to see. Love the beach. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Now, in an overview of the market today, which we were previously talking about, some positive things. The VIX really collapsed today in a major way. So you had the VIX dropping like a rock. You had financials, the XLF broad-based with a really nice follow-through. You had some tech recover, but you know what sector recovered in a major way today? Housing. Almost all the housing stocks were up like 2 or 3% individually each. So home builders performed really, really good today. A lot of them regaining their 50-day moving averages. So that's kind of good. That's what you want to see, particularly when the VIX absolutely plummets. Now, also, additionally, and we'll try to keep it markets focused, but geopolitical events do rock the markets. Who remembers the live stream we did on the night, literally on the night, that Israel retaliated against Iran? I just remember taking a mental note. I'm like, all right, remember the sentiment of the chat, right? And then again, this is very anecdotal, but everybody was freaking out in the chat, right? We had a lot of people who don't usually watch the stream. They were commenting, it's World War III is breaking off. I remember going on X and on Twitter and scrolling through my feed, and every single post was an engagement-baiting, nonsensical post about World War III, which just so happened to coincide with the correction in the market. I've never seen one post since then about World War III. And crude oil has actually gone down, which tells me to believe, yet again, everybody was panicking about World War III for nothing. Zero reason. I think this is going to de-escalate. I don't think what's going on in the Middle East, particularly between Israel and Iran and Israel and Palestine, are really going to ramp up to a World War III scenario. I'm not seeing it. You would really see it in the markets. And I think you'd see it in oil. So, I don't know. Any thoughts about that? Because the sentiment that week was so crazily bearish, and the S&P was only like 6% off of its all-time record high. And I was getting texts from family members, I was getting texts from friends saying, oh, this is it, this is the big top, World War III, everybody's freaking out. Hey, check the logic. Good to see you. Oof, the wind is picking up like crazy. This is a good shot looking all the way down to Radio City. Sam Oliver versus Tom, could we be in a bear trap? I mean, yeah, anything is possible, but you know, the market, you got to put things in perspective. You know, since the October lows, right, we've been straight up in a straight line week after week after week since October. Markets go up, markets go down. And you had some of the TMLs. Look at this cop on this horse. Look at this. This is the NYPD mounted unit. Trap markets. You know, the S&P 500 is pulling back 5% from a brand new all-time record high. When you had all of the leaders, right, like the Nvidia, I don't know why I can't say that tonight. All of the semiconductors were extended like crazy, without even having a mere, 5% pullback. You have intermediate term corrections within the long running bull. Looks like we're gonna have to head further inland. Maybe there's some politicians in the neighborhood. This is the BNP Paribas. On 6th Avenue. I think last night I took you guys on a tour of New York City's 6th Ave. Not a lot of people know this exists, but it does. It goes all the way up to 57th, but it's too late. They closed this off, but you could walk all the way through to 57th. Biker Miami says, hey Tom, have you been to Pensacola, Florida? I have not, but I've heard about it. I think one of my buddies that I used to work with lived there. That's in the Panhandle, right? That's like north, all the way kind of up there. I haven't, no. I haven't really traveled to the west coast of Florida that much, honestly, at all. I'm more of a East Coast kind of guy. So I go Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach. That's kind of where I'm more familiar. But who knows? There could be a time, maybe next year or the year after, I'll be spending a lot of time in, what's it called? Blanking on the name. It's been a long day. A little tired. It's right where that IMG Academy is. We always talk about it. Anyway, it's over there. Hey, Austin Tennis says, Tom, I'm currently interviewing for Cloudflare. How do you feel about the company? Ticker symbol NET. I think that's a good company. I'm assuming you're interviewing for an AE role, right? Like an account executive role. I think it's pretty good. I think that's good, man. Best of luck. Hopefully you get it. And if you need any help, send me an email. I have a few friends who work there. I think you're a pager duty still now, right? Now, if you ever want to come to New York, I know that Datadog is hiring AEs and enterprise AEs, and they are in the New York Times building. But yeah, I'd say that's a really good opportunity. Fingers crossed, hopefully you get it. No, it's not Brendanton, it's I really don't know why my memory is terrible tonight. Sarasota, Florida, that's it. So the IMG Academy, which is like that prestigious sports academy, is right around that area in Sarasota. And we were bidding on a new project there. We wound up not getting it, but I think it's actually for the better, because sometimes it's good to be the second or third team around on a project, so you can kind of learn from the first mistakes, and the market's kind of over there right now. Ghostbusters says Trump will win and the whole market will fly into 2025. Maybe. I mean, the market's already flying. I mean, this has been one of the strongest bull markets I've ever traded in. I would say the only strongest bull market to this has been 2021. That was just like ridiculous. All throughout 2021, forget about stocks correcting to its 50-day. Stocks barely even corrected to its 21-day. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I still believe, it is in my view, that this is a larger secular bull market. And along the way, you have corrections within a bull. 8-10% pullbacks, corrections. And corrections are also really shouldn't be thought about just in terms of price. It's also duration, right? I mean, there's periods of time where the market just goes sideways for decades, quite literally. Now, I was going to ask this. What's Japan doing right now? So Japan had 2 really nice days of recovery. And I think this is probably a good entry point if we have an additional green close today, right? So Japan's open, and they rip to the high of the day. Because you have a few things going on in Japan, right? You have currency in free fall, which is helping out stocks. But you also have, from a technical perspective, let's cross here. You have Japanese stocks trading at 52-week highs and nearly all-time record highs for the first time since 1989. And I think this could be the very, very start of a very prosperous bull market in Japan. Matthew M says, Tom, if you go to Sarasota, check out ST Armorans. Very nice area, fits your style. Let me take a screenshot of that. Matthew M. Thank you for the recommendation. I definitely will. Biker says AK was in Pensacola, Florida, passing by I-10. Chris 213 says no Fed cut this year. You're probably right, Chris. You're probably right. Which I think is the right thing to do. We heard from one of the Fed presidents last week, Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari. He's sort of echoing the same thing. He said, look, it's very possible we don't get a rate cut till 2025 because we have all of this sustained inflation above 2%. Hell, above 3% we have sustained inflation. So there's really no reason to cut. So I think we'll just kind of remain in this 5.25% to 5.5% range for longer, which is good for savers, right? If anybody has a lot of liquidity and you have money in money markets, you know, you're compounding out risk-free at 5%-ish. Now, it's true that equities have historically better performance, but you have to take into consideration risk-adjusted returns, right? Risk-adjusted returns. So if you're nearing retirement age, this is a good bubble tea place, Gongcha. I didn't even know they opened this location. But you have to take into account risk-adjusted returns. So let's say if you're nearing retirement age, right, or you've just retired, and let's say you have $5 million bucks. That's kind of your nest egg to retire on. With everything that we've been through, with the pandemic, all that stuff, right, with market volatility, stock market going down 30% in 2 months during the COVID, is it that crazy to say, all right, let me take half this money and just park it in a money market where it will automatically compound out at plus 5%? It's probably actually a pretty good play, particularly if your primary residence is paid off. You know, just do the math. Even if you want to park the whole thing in money markets, you know, what's, 5.5% of 5 mil? It's a lot of money. You can live off that, right? And there's no risk, technically, right? Again, air quotes. So it's important to kind of understand risk-adjusted returns. So savers are being rewarded again. I don't understand why anybody in this environment would be leaving money in checking accounts. I mean, that's actually going to be, I believe, a big problem for some banks. Because even at JP Morgan Chase, any of these banks, if you have a checking account, chances are you're earning no interest still. You know, Jamie Dimon's giving you nothing. So why not park that in liquid money market accounts that's going to pay you 5%, which is also a real rate of return now for once, right? Before, we were living in an environment where rates didn't give you a real rate of return, factoring in inflation. Shell says money markets are one of the best ways to go. Yeah, and they provide instant liquidity. They're very, very liquid, right? So even if you're a portfolio manager, right, and you've made all this money in the run-up in all these, semiconductor stocks, you take profits, you roll into a money market, you compound that at 5%, you wait from other setups, and then you dump back into to equities. So I think it's by and large a good thing. Now, it's not all good, right? Because the problem is this. We also have to think about the country at large. And the United States spends money like crazy, and our debt, or the interest on our debt, I should say, is accruing at cartoonishly ridiculous levels. So that's one thing we need to think about. There's going to come a time where the Fed is going to have to violate its policy of remaining independent of the federal government, right? The Federal Reserve is supposed to act independent of the government, make decisions independent of it. But, we live in the real world, and I think we need to understand that Fed Chair Jerome Powell is not stupid. He knows that our national debt is compounding out at ridiculous rates because interest rates are so much. I think the interest on our debt, I don't know the exact statistic. I think it may be the monthly or the yearly interest on our debt has eclipsed that of our whole entire defense spending budget, which is insane. So that's not sustainable. So from that perspective, do rates need to come down just to bail the U.S. out? I don't know. But then again, if they do, you could for sure guarantee that inflation in the US would probably be 5% plus if we started to cut rates right now.
Turn around and face me. Oh, that guy is fast. Listen to me first. Turn around and face me, guys. We're gonna do this right now. Now listen.
All right, 46th Street, crossing to the downside, headed back to 34th. Hey, hang with Mark Mom. Good to see you. Yeah, Trade Brigade's credibility is the only thing we have. Jerome Powell on 60 Minutes. He better not bail us out. Yeah, and I think, Jerome Powell's done a pretty good job, right, navigating this whole thing. I think if you were to ask anybody on Wall Street that if you were to raise interest rates 500 basis points in under a year, would the stock market be trading near all-time record highs? Probably pretty much everybody would say no. So, this guy has really navigated, probably the softest landing in history, to be quite honest. Now, we are going to get more inflation data this week, right? I think we're going to get the PCE data out. So who knows? Maybe we get better news. Probably not, though, because CPI came in hot. Now, as we cross the street here, I was listening to a really good podcast. It's called The Compound. And there was a gentleman on by the name of Art Hogan. Really good guy. He's a good follow on X or on Twitter. Trade Brigade says the PC is Friday at 8:30. Thank you for that. So there you go. From Trade Brigade. Friday at 8:30, PCE. Now, here's something interesting. If you go to The Compound, and I would recommend everybody listen to this podcast, it's very entertaining, and it's a great episode. Really, really good episode. So it's an episode of The Compound with Art Hogan. It was filmed probably 3 days ago now, maybe 2 or 3 days ago. But one of the things that he said is that you look at the CPI, right, the Consumer Price Index, and if you look at the two components that attributed to the vast majority of the increase in CPI, it was shelter costs and crude oil. Crude and then gas, energy, right? But he says nowadays, if you really think about it, oh, look at that. They're taking wedding pictures in Times Square. Those must come out incredible, right? You never know what you're going to see in New York, right? It's almost 11 o'clock and people are taking wedding photos. It's kind of cool. Anyway, but he was saying crude oil and gas prices are some of the most talked about inflationary things, right? People complain that, oh my God, I just paid $4 a gallon in gas. But if you look at it in terms of the overall percentage of spend, it's almost virtually nothing. And I never really thought about it like that before. Does that make sense? There was some infographics he put on The Compound, so that's why I say just watch that interview. But it kind of makes a lot of sense. Even if you're putting gas in your car, right? And let's say it's $4 a gallon gas. Is that really going to impact the average American's budget in a massive way? So essentially, it's the overall percentage of spend. Gas is such an insignificant amount of the overall budget, but yet it's the most talked about and the most focused on. Which I never really thought about it that way, but I think it's the easiest thing to compare and it's the easiest thing to complain about, right? Very interesting. Never thought about it like that before. Billy says, Tom, have you read Tony Robbins' new book, Holy Grail of Investing? I have not, but I'll check it out. Let me take a screenshot of that. Holy Grail of Investing. I have not read that. That's true. VSync says we also have this week's annualized GDP. I think that may be tomorrow or Thursday when Microsoft reports. But I think GDP is supposed to come in at what, 2.5%? ERB says you can be sure when officials' inflation is 3%, you can put 6 or 7% for sure. Yeah, true. Very, very true. I think you're referring to how we've calculated inflation in the past. Tariq Khan, good to see you. NBA Elias, Tom, what are your thoughts on Tesla's earnings reports today? I don't have any thoughts on it because I didn't have a chance to sit down and take a look at it yet. I was running around all day like crazy. But from my Twitter feed, it doesn't seem like it was too good. And Ross Gerber was trending on X, and everybody was, having banter back and forth about Ross. So I was like, yeah, it's looking like a shit show. So when I get on the train, I'm probably gonna listen to the replay of the report and take a look at the deck. I just didn't have time to take a look at it. But what were your thoughts on it, like high level? How were margins? For anybody that got a chance to look at Tesla's earnings report tonight, what were your thoughts? If you guys are enjoying the live stream so far tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We do these streams pretty much every day, starting at 8:30. MD's Tesla has resistance at about 167 or 170. Well, I mean, Tesla's been in a bear market for 2 years. But here's the thing, and this is actually what I remember what I was going to say before. With everybody really dumping on Tesla, and you're even starting to see some of the most cult-like fanatics, right? And we've talked about this before. I was watching this interview one time, and I was with a really, really good friend who's a very successful money manager on the street. And he says in his experience, through 30 years of managing money, it's the most polarizing investments that wind up making the craziest moves. So for example, Tesla, let me just try to get around this truck. So for example, Tesla, when it had that massive move in the last bull market, you could think of Bitcoin, right? The most polarizing, most crazy topics where you have extreme bulls and extreme bears and almost no moderates. Like, think about it. With Tesla, you have some people that are so cult-like over Elon Musk and Tesla that it's almost like a little bit scary. It's like literally a physical cult, these people. Not saying it's bad, not saying it's good. But then you have the complete opposite side of that say Elon Musk is a fraud, Tesla's a fraud, the company's going to zero. You have all of these short sellers, trying to blast the stock to zero. You even have billionaire infighting with Bill Gates. Reportedly took out a massive short position in Tesla, even though he claims that he's a big environmentalist, which is all facade, which we can go into later. But those are kind of the investments that tend to outperform. Same thing with Bitcoin, right? You have some of these people, these Bitcoin maximalists as they're called, they are so infatuated with trying to convince other people that Bitcoin is going to save the world and it's the new currency of the future, and everybody's going to transact in Bitcoin, and if you don't have any Bitcoin you're going to be poor, and all this stuff. And then on the opposite side you have people like Peter Schiff that think it's a complete fraud and that never stop talking bad about it, right? Those are the things that tend to go crazy. And so the point is, you're seeing something very interesting, and this is all sentiment based. Okay, we're not talking about the earnings right now. We will get into that in a minute. But pure sentiment based, you're starting to see some really, I would say, over the top Tesla fanatics almost kind of turn on the company, which is very, very interesting. So I think if you're going short Tesla now, purely from that aspect, I would say number one, you totally missed the move. And number two, you're probably going to get blown out of the water. Again, I don't have a position. I don't own the company. I own it through an index, right? If you own the S&P 500, you own Tesla. But I think that's going to be my prediction. Like, if I had to make a fun prediction, I think you're going to have a lot of people piling in short here at the very dead lows. And in 6 months, I think you'll see the stock higher. That's what I think. ERB says US dollar always was and always will be the world reserve currency. And I mean, that's another thing. Think about all these people that think BRICS is going to dethrone the petrodollar and the US. US dollar is going to go to zero, all this stuff. That's another interesting point. Little Poots says, I literally pretend Tesla doesn't exist. Yeah, Robinson Resources, kind of like blind loyalty. I think that's the perfect way to put it. Noodles says, so many Teslas on Long Island. I noticed that too, and there's a lot of Teslas in South Florida too. Peter says, Ron Barron, who is a big Tesla holder, should be on Squawk Box tomorrow sometime. Wonder what he now thinks. I didn't know that he was going to be on Squawk Box tomorrow. I will 1000% be watching that. Now, Ron Barron, for those of you who don't know, is one of the most, if not the most, successful growth stock investor of all time. Their office is not too far away from mine, actually. They're right on Madison Avenue. And Ron Barron runs the Barron Funds. So if you do some research on that business, or Ron Barron in general, self-made billionaire. I think he's the single shareholder that made, I think, the most money in Tesla, or I think one of them. And I believe 2 newsletters ago, or it may have been 3 newsletters ago that I sent out to everybody, I included the link to the annual shareholder meeting, which took place at Lincoln Center, I believe, for the Barron Funds, when Ron Barron did his keynote speech. You guys have to watch that. Hold on, I'll put it up on the screen. So if you scan the QR code on your screen and punch in your email, it's going to take you to our Substack. We publish on our Substack every other Thursday. This Thursday we're going to publish again. But if you go back through our archives, you're going to see I embedded a link to the annual shareholder meeting for the Barron Funds, Ron Barron. And he gives this incredible keynote speech. Talked a lot about Tesla, but also talked a lot about investing principles for the future, and how he created this mega multi-billion-dollar AUM fund of the Barron Funds. So Ron Barron, great guy, incredibly smart, and apparently, according to Peter, he will be on CNBC tomorrow. So I will be watching that. So yeah, or if you can't scan the QR code, If you type !news, NEWS in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link to our Substack. Now, one of the, I would say, the parts that stood out to me the most from that speech was regarding the competition of talent to try to work at Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink. So apparently they compiled the data, and it's much harder by a factor of 3 to get a job at Tesla, to get a job at SpaceX, and to get a job at Neuralink than it is to get into some of the most prestigious Ivy League institutions in the United States, such as Stanford, Columbia, and the like. Although, I don't know, Ivy League's not looking too good. It's looking like, anyway, I'll bite my tongue on that. But the lesson there for me is, if everybody's counting Tesla out, which it may be out, I don't think it is, the world's best and brightest, by and large, want to work at Tesla, by and large, want to work at SpaceX, and by and large, want to work at Neuralink. That's kind of what the data suggests. So is that something you really want to be betting against? I'm not saying you own it, right? I'm not saying go ahead and buy Tesla, but I don't think it's worth your time to speculate on the short side on this thing, because it could very, very easily blow the brains out of the back of your skull, right? If you try to get short this stuff. That's kind of my take, but hey, Teresa Diaz, what's going on? Thanks for joining us. Robert says Neuralink is nuts. I agree. Neuralink is very encouraging for humanity, and I think it's going to do a lot of good and help a lot of people. Look at the Empire State Building tonight. I think the Rangers are playing, right? New York Rangers are playing right now. Yeah, Tariq. It's like the Ivy League only takes protesters right now. Well, Columbia University has a whole set of problems going on. Now, here's the thing, right? Let's put the political stuff aside, what's going on at Columbia. So they've officially moved to a hybrid style, I believe, learning environment, whatever that means. Could you imagine, let's say if you're just a regular kid, right? Let's say if you're an international student from Japan or something, I don't know. And you go to Columbia and all of this stuff is going on. You really don't know what's going on, but you just know that there's a bunch of protesters, which are really not protesters, they're just like little hellraisers, taking over the campus and making it an encampment and making the environment so divisive where you can't even learn, you can't even do anything, and you paid $70,000 for the year. That's what's really unfair. So as Columbia, right, goes to this hybrid learning environment, is anybody going to get a refund? I don't know. I mean, I didn't come from a really rich family, and I'm not smart enough to get into any of these schools. But if I was, and if I paid the 70 grand or I took out loans, and they said, you know what, it's not going to be in-person learning because we have a bunch of, Columbia University music students that think they're going to save the world by pitching a tent and yelling at Jewish students, you're going to learn over Zoom. I would go to the admissions office and say, okay, if I'm going to learn over Zoom, you're going to charge me Zoom pricing. Okay, I'm not going to pay rack rate for your bullshit. So I think if Columbia is really going to do that and go remote learning because they've allowed their school to be taken over by these derelicts, they should be issuing some refunds. You cannot scam people, essentially, and charge them $70,000 a year for them to learn on a computer. They could just take online classes and pay half the price. So hopefully, if some of these students are smart, which I'm sure they are, because they're Ivy League material, they should be demanding refunds on their tuition. And I don't care what the political environment is, but if you renege on the deal, right? The deal is I give you 70 grand, I sit my ass in the chair and you teach me. If you renege on that side of the deal, well, then you give me my money back. That's what I say. Yeah, that's true. Hang with Mark Moms is in 2000, when all the colleges did that in 2021, none of them reduced the tuitions, nor did they issue refunds. That's true, but that was also during the pandemic, which is very, very different. At first, nobody knew what was going on, right? Everybody was freaking out. It was a very different environment. This is the responsibility of Columbia, right? When the world shut down, that was the government telling you to do that. This is Columbia University shutting down because they can't keep their own students safe. That's the problem, right? And I'm talking both sides should get a refund. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I have nothing to do with any of it. But I'm saying if I was a student, I would definitely be asking for reduced tuition. I mean, I think that's only fair. Wow, Hang with Mark Mom says, Tom, 2023, my son was fully remote as well. That's crazy that they're still doing that. Look at all that fruit. Hey, sunshine after rain. What's going on? Good to see you. We're currently headed down Broadway.
How much is it?
Peter says I wouldn't give them a dime if I was alumni. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the point, and not to really ramble on about this, but it is a major piece of news in New York City. The problem is, like, at the end of the day, people have to learn there, right? And since it's such a high ticket price item, you kind of really have to take it seriously because there's a lot of students, right? Not everybody has rich parents that go to Columbia. There's some students that are taking out loans to do this. And I don't think it's fair to them that they have to take on the full burden of the student loans just because, you know, this multi-billion-dollar corporation, which essentially Columbia University is, it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They can't keep the campus running, okay? They easily have the funds, Columbia University, to pay for a security decal. And I'm not saying to shut down the protests, right? I don't agree with the protests. I think a lot of the stuff that's been saying is pretty vile. But make a dedicated section that's not an encampment, right? That's blocking the path of people going to college. Make it on the sidewalk, you know, have them fill out a form to say this is the dedicated protesting area, and keep it away from the students. Like, life has to go on. You know, you can't shut down an Ivy League institution and prevent everybody from learning because you have an opinion. You know, everybody has an opinion. So you have your dedicated area to protest, and people can go to school. You know, if you make it so people cannot go to school, that's just where it gets really ridiculous, I think. I mean, it's gotten to the point where they're like, no in-person classes, you know, we're going to do it online. That's unacceptable to me. That's a little ridiculous. Because what precedent does that set to other universities, right? There's hellraisers and little, you know, I kind of try to watch my language, but there's these radicals at every school. So if you let it go on at Columbia, they're going to start to shut down all these colleges. And now nobody can learn. So we're coming up on the new Ritz-Carlton Nomad here. Let me see how much battery I got. Oh, we're good. Carlos is like, it seems like learning stopped a long time ago at those schools. I mean, it seems like it. But then again, I think very seldom do you have like the engineering students doing this stuff. Very seldom it's the business school students. Like when you take a look at these people and just like, if you had to guess, right? If you had to throw up a guess, you know, what school they're in, it's probably some like nonsense study. I mean, just at least in my experience, I don't know. Or these people aren't even going to school there. And you just have these radicals that sneak into the campus and none of them actually attend the school. And you just allow them to do that. You know, in my opinion, Columbia University is private property. Columbia should just throw them out. If you don't go to Columbia, you can't be on our campus. If you want to pay 70 grand, you can come on the campus. But if you don't show your ID card, can't come. Sorry. Hey, JY, this is Lo from South Korea. What's up, JY? Hope everything's well in Korea. I should be there pretty soon. Hey, what's up, Andy? Oh, we have a lot of Korean viewers tonight. Good to see everybody. Now, what was I going to say? Any predictions for Microsoft Thursday? What do you guys think? Now, obviously, what everybody's going to be watching when Microsoft reports is the cloud computing segment, right? Microsoft Azure Cloud. And I think that's really going to set the precedent for the remainder of earnings season for big tech, right? When you hear Google Cloud, Amazon, AWS, Oracle, the like. Oh, wise Alice's college is simply not worth it. I disagree. I used to have a little bit more of a radicalized approach on college, but I think that's because I was currently in college, and no college is perfect. But if you look at the data, like if you just purely look at statistics, people who have gone to college, at least some, right? You don't even have to graduate. Let's say if you have some college, you make more money than those who don't, right? That's just what the data says. And it's particularly true for people with a degree. So I do think college is valuable. I really, really do. I think it's a great option, but with anything, it needs to be a financial decision. And it needs to be a rational decision. The problem is, when you're a 17-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid, you're kind of stupid. At least I was. I won't speak for anybody else, right? But I mean, it's not like when I was 17 and 18, you know, I mean, I didn't even know about any of this stuff, right? I didn't really come from that kind of pedigree. So what it has caused is really guidance counselors colluding and forcing college down these students' throats at all costs, no matter the price. And I think that's really short-sighted. Because when you're 17 and 18, you're like, oh, who cares? It's 30 grand a year. I'm going to go to college and party and, you know, hit the bong in the dorm room, which is great. I mean, you could smoke, you know, and hit the bong or do whatever, and that's fine. But I think when you graduate and you look back, you're like, whew, and you look at that bill, and then you see all that interest accruing, you're like, yikes. You know, I should have went to that state school that was $3,000 a year and got the same education and got the same degree. So I think college is worth it, but it needs to be evaluated as a business decision like anything else. What is going to be your return on your investment? If you can go to Pace University and study criminal justice for $80,000 a year, or you can go 20 blocks north at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and study criminal justice for $3,000 a year, do you really think a criminal justice degree from Pace is worth the extra $78,000? Probably not. Probably not. So those are the kind of decisions you need to make. But unfortunately, those decisions are never talked about. At least they were never talked about when I was in high school. It was just pick a college, no matter the price. And if you can't pay for it, well, take out student loans. So I think college is very valuable. I think people should go. But if you can't afford to go, just do the math. Hold on, let me plug in my computer here. Just don't overspend. All right, a little bit of an intermission. Hold on. Wow, it's getting really windy now. MN's is $3,000 a year, seriously? Yeah, I think I paid like $9,000 a year, or like $1,000 a year, something like that. It's public school. It's not, it's not the most glamorous, right? You can't really, brag to your friends that you went to Yale or Harvard or Columbia. But you get a regular education, you get the degree, you get the piece of paper, and you're out of there. That's all. But I think the overarching point is, when you're in high school, look to get into a career that's going to pay really, really well. And then, work backwards and say, okay, this career pays really, really well. What degree do I need to obtain this career, right? And then you ask yourself, how can I get the degree that's going to get me the highest paying job, but how could I pay out of pocket the least amount of possible to get that degree? And that may mean you need to stay home. That may mean, you need to go to a state school. But I think everybody could agree your future self is really going to thank you. When you're 30 years old, you're making good money and you have no student loan debt. I mean, it feels fantastic. It really, really does. It's kind of like, you're delaying the gratification. Don't do the instant gratification stuff. So, now this is the building that's unfortunately blocking the view of the Empire State Building. Look at that, it's almost totally covered the Empire. Peter says, I have 3 college degrees and I have found it to be worth it. I did not study art history or diversity studies. Yeah, I mean, college by and large is a great investment, but just don't take on a ridiculous amount of debt to do it. That's all. Hey, Elliott Wave Review. Says Tom, I'd say you need to find a career that pays well and one that you're passionate about. Yeah. Now, I was reading this book, and this guy makes a really good point. I believe he's actually a professor at the NYU Stern School of Business. I think his name's Professor Scott Galloway, I believe. Now, he makes a really good point. And he says that all these people that say, follow your passions and, do what you're super, super passionate about. And this is his take on it. This is not mine. I'm just regurgitating his point. He's like, a lot of those people that are saying that are already like extremely wealthy, and they've gotten wealthy through, in creating these massive businesses and selling out of them and things like that. So what he says is, look, when you're young, you don't need to be overly passionate and lovey-dovey with your career, right? If you can pick a very, very lucrative career and work it like crazy for 10 or 12 years, make the money, then you're 35, and then go do whatever you're passionate about when you make all the money, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because if from the get-go, you just do only the things that you're passionate about, You know, I'm passionate about skateboarding, but I would be living in this tent right here if all I did all day is just skateboard. You know, I'm passionate about skateboarding, but I'm not gonna have that as my sole focus. I'm gonna go do something that pays a lot of money, right? That has a lot of career runway, and I'm gonna work it like crazy for 10, 20 years, and then go do what you're passionate about once you made the money. I think that's an interesting take. Again, not necessarily my take. I do agree with it. I see where he's coming from. But I think that's interesting. So you don't necessarily need to do something you love, right? I wouldn't say most people like absolutely love their jobs, but it's a job's a job. It pays the bills. You know, you have good income, you have a good career, you have good health care. It sets your family up for a good foundation, and then you can go do what you want to do. It's an interesting take. Interesting take. I would recommend the name of the book, but I forget the name of the book. But he's a professor right down here, Scott Galloway. He's on a bunch of podcasts, but he kind of made that point, which I thought was interesting. I think it's worth listening to. Noodle says, have I ever entered any contest for skateboarding? No, I just like riding around, you know, cruising around the city. No contest. I'm not like super talented at it. Let's head over by the new school. Sean D says Galloway or Callaway. I think it's Galloway, I believe. I guess, you know, at the end of the day, there's no one right answer. And I think that's what's great about America, right? There's no one right answer. America is such a beacon of opportunity that you can make a really good living doing a million different things, right? There's a million ways to make $1 million, and it's so diverse. There's not one way that works for everybody, and I think that's very unique to America. And that's what capitalism produces. Because the economy is so massive. I think a lot of people forget this. The economy is so massive that there's a market for literally everything. There's a market for literally everything. I mean, there's people making literally hundreds of millions of dollars selling slime. I was talking to one of my coworkers. He has little kids, and he was telling me about this slime stuff. He's like, the kids are obsessed with it, and I was doing some research into it. And there's these businesses that make these just stupid little kids' toys, and they crush, and the gross margins are insane. That's just one little example, but you know, there's so many different ways that you can be successful here. But there's not one right way to go about it. Cash only. This is the demand for misinformation is massive. I don't think the demand for misinformation is massive. I think the rate at which we consume misinformation is massive, just because the internet is so big. Mrs. Yu says, this is true, my daughter loves slime. I had no idea about it until my buddy was telling me about it. Apparently it's like a huge craze among kids. I think one of these buildings is the Freemasons in New York. 71 West 23rd Street. Right here. Yeah, it's in this building. Used to stay away from it. I was actually in there once. There was I don't know why it was in there, but there was a finance conference in there. This was probably 2015. NBA Elias is Tom. A friend of mine earns $120,000 a year welding, has 2 college degrees, and does not use any of them. Yeah, welding is such a cool skill. Sometimes I'll want, you guys gotta go down this rabbit hole. There's a crazy YouTube rabbit hole of underwater welders. It's really just unbelievable kind of job and a skill. There's some of these YouTube videos where these people go out, I mean, it must be like miles into the ocean, and they're on these huge deep sea oil rigs, right? And they get all this scuba gear on and they dive down and they weld and fix things on the oil rig. It's crazy. Hey, Colton Manning, what's going on? Happy Tuesday. This is a boiler. We'll make this right. This will take us back to Madison Square Garden. And I think the Rangers game is just getting out right now. Patrick, yeah, we've been starting late. We started really late tonight. We started like at 9:30. But I was in the office late too, unfortunately, but it is what it is. Okay, let's start to head up 7th. Let's cross back over and go up. Oh, someone says, oh, Rangers play tomorrow, says Joseph. For some reason I thought they played today.
Yeah,
Just make a move around here. We're gonna pass the SUNY FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology. MNs as they played tonight. Rangers won 4-3. Seems like a lot of the New York sports teams are doing good. Last night we had the Knicks win, which is great. Rangers apparently won today, which is good. Anybody watch that boxing match recently? Ryan Garcia and the other guy. I don't know the other guy's name, but it seems like that other gentleman is always in the media. That was a pretty cool fight. And I wasn't even, I'm not even a big boxing guy, but I watched the highlights. It was pretty good. It was fun. Oh, noodles. Very cool. Your daughter got accepted into FIT. Well, congratulations. It's awesome. That's one of the top fashion schools in the country. Very cool. It's right here. Just south of Penn Station. She's gonna have a really good time. West 26th Street, 7th. The main building is in between 26th and 27th Street, right here on 7th Avenue, or also nicknamed Fashion Avenue, right? But congrats, that's awesome. Great achievement. Since we're here, we might as well take a look at it. Let's cross. Never knew they had a museum at FIT. This is the Art and Design Gallery. These look like traditional Korean clothes, these two. Someone says, who do you have? Jake Paul or Mike Tyson? Whew, that's a good one. Now, granted, my expertise about boxing is pretty much zero. But I would say Mike Tyson, if I had to pick. Even though that Jake Paul fellow is quite young and spry, very strong and witty, I don't know. I think Mike Tyson just has that dog in him. I think he's just a fighter, you know. And I think there's potentially different aspects of it. Like Jake Paul is probably better physically, obviously, because he's much younger. He's probably even much stronger. But I mean, Mike Tyson has had a hell of a life, like a really, really hard life. And that kind of puts a callus on you that I don't think this kid understands. Now, the kid is a hard worker, unbelievable hard worker. But, I mean, Brownsville, Brooklyn, Mike Tyson, just he's an animal, that guy. I don't know. Is that actually going to happen, by the way, or is that just rumors? If that does happen, I actually may pay to see that. And I'm not a boxing guy, but just out of curiosity, I may pay to see it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never, like, experience does matter, but it also doesn't matter in some cases, to be honest.
Hey, well, he'll step up. He's going to have to.
You know, even if you have like a year experience in something, you could still be very, very successful and beat out people who have decades of experience in things. So. Wow, hang with Mark Mom. This is when Mike Tyson was just starting out, making his first million. He came into my bank to open an account. My manager denied him. No way. What a crazy story that is. What a wild story. Now, I think Mike Tyson is a perfect example of somebody who's, you know, made an ungodly amount of money, pretty much lost everything he's had, and then gained it back. I think that's really admirable. I mean, that takes a lot of fight too. You know, because you work so hard to make all that money, and then you lose everything, and you feel like, oh my God, I've worked my entire life to create what I've created, and you lose everything, and then you have the ability to take a step back and pretty much get everything back and more. That's pretty impressive in and of itself. Look at this. Bunbury. June 18th. Not everybody. Well, it's getting late. Apologize for being late tonight. I think we started streaming at 9:30 p.m. What can you do? Sometimes you gotta work late. If you guys enjoyed the live stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video and click the subscribe button if you're new. We will be back live tomorrow starting at 8:30 or 8:45. Hopefully we'll be on time. And again, if you want to sign up to receive all of our free investing research, which we'll be sending out on Thursday, just go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen, punch in your email, or you could type !news, N-E-W-S, in the chat, and the Nightbot will drop the link to our Substack. Lots to talk about coming up later in the week. Microsoft earnings, GDP estimates, or I should say GDP numbers, and inflation data. We'll talk about all of that and more right here on Walks and Wall Street. But until then, everybody have a great night. Arav, thank you so much. Mary, Austin City Limits. Hang with Mark Mom. Have a great night. Hawaii, appreciate you. Happy for your Rangers tonight. Crispy, DM. Always a bull market somewhere. You just need to know where to look. See you guys tomorrow. Take care.